What would you do if you knew there was someone out there who compared the Holocaust to a cookie baking operation? Who is a white nationalist, white supremacist, who has praised Adolf Hitler and Vladimir Putin? Would you want to go speak at this person's event? Because these are known things. They're not new things. They're multi-year-old things. Would you want to support a candidate who knowingly goes to speak at a conference hosted by someone who's a white nationalist, who talks like David Duke, who has a history of praising Adolf Hitler and Vladimir Putin and dismissing the Holocaust? Would you want to go speak at that person's event? Because Marjorie Taylor Greene, a congresswoman from Georgia, went to speak at an event hosted by Nick Fuentes. Fuentes is one of the members of the alt-right. He is a well-known white nationalist. He is well known for being dismissive of the Holocaust and blaming Jews for the world's problems. He is an anti-Semite. He's a disgusting creature of the alt-right who sane and normal people should want nothing to do with. He's been banned from CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Conference, and so what he tends to do is now have an American First Political Action Conference, AFPAC, and he does it in the same location as CPAC and tries to invite speakers. And he invited Marjorie Taylor Greene, who spoke at both CPAC and AFPAC. And right before bringing her on stage, Fuentes defended Hitler and Putin and led the crowd in a chant for Putin. Did Marjorie Taylor Greene not hear this? She had to be off stage. I know how these events work. I've had these events. It wasn't like he did it in some distant moment prior to her arrival. It was in the freaking introduction to her speech. And then she came up on stage and talked. And at first she tried to do that. I didn't know. How do you not know? If you don't know, fire your staff and tell us, who are you firing? Your chief of staff? Who? Who are you firing? Because this guy's been around for multiple years. The same thing happened last year with Gosar. He apologized. And now she's doubled down on this. And now she's saying, well, you know, Jesus spoke to sinners. You're not Jesus, you idiot. Jesus spoke to sinners. And what did he tell them? Go and sin no more. What are you doing? Defending the views of the white nationalists. These are just alienated conservatives, and I'd like to bring them to the fold. You don't bring white nationalists who praise Adolf Hitler into the fold, you idiot. Do you not know what you were doing? We have people calling all the time to defend Marjorie. Oh, I know her, and she's so smart. If she's so smart, how did she not know she was talking to a white supremacist who praises Adolf Hitler and his group? How did she not know if she's so smart? Well, you can't know everything. I'm sorry. She's an American member of Congress. You don't go speak to a group and not know who you're speaking to and then try to double down and just say, well, they're young, alienated conservatives. No, they're not. They're the second coming of the KKK. And everybody knows it. You're not Jesus. If you were speaking to them and you were on the same wavelength as Jesus, you would tell them to repent, and you didn't tell them to repent. Now, I need you to listen to me before you get all mad. I'm not going to listen to you ever again. If we don't clean up our own side, the voters clean up our side. Look at the Democrats. Look at them. They have all of these idiots out there campaigning on defunding the police, and the voters are wiping them out. The voters are cleaning up the Democratic side because the Democrats have refused to clean up their own side. Some of them will be perfectly safe, but anyone in their periphery is going to get wiped out by the voters, and has been. 2020 was supposed to be a big wave for Democrats, and it wasn't, because voters rejected their defund the police views. Voters turned on Marjorie Taylor Greene of the left. And I want you to hear this. I want you to understand that if we don't clean up the crazy on our side, the voters will start repudiating us. The voters will start rejecting us. The media loves to play up Marjorie Taylor Greene, and they never want to play up the crazy. And you can call it and say, well, you're playing up the crazy right now. Why are you playing it? Because I'm a conservative Republican, and she claims to be one, and she's an idiot. And she's making the rest of us look bad. It's no different from Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. And none of you think they should be in Congress, so why do you think Marjorie Taylor Greene should be in Congress? The voters, by the way, anyone those people come campaign for loses. What do you think is going to happen for the Republicans who Marjorie Taylor Greene comes campaigning for? We have to clean up our own side. You do not go talk to a bunch of white nationalists and then say you're like Jesus talking to sinners. No, the hell you're not, because you didn't tell them to repent from their sin of racism. If we don't clean up our own side, the voters will clean it up for us, and they will put in someone who will vote against you. Now, here's the thing. Marjorie Taylor Greene, she typically votes the right way. She typically votes as you would want her to vote. But you can replace her with someone else who's a Republican, a conservative, and they'll vote just like Marjorie Taylor Greene. But there's a difference. Marjorie Taylor Greene can't get anything done. She can't. And you can say, and I know some of you are tempted to say, but I mean, the Democrats are in charge, so she couldn't get anything done anyway. That's BS. There's a member of Congress who's on the Freedom Caucus, who's a loyal conservative, devout Christian, who was able to convince the Democrats to fix the PPP problems for small businesses. And they passed his measure, because he, a member of the Freedom Caucus, who's actually got a better record of conservative voting than Marjorie Taylor Greene, was able to convince the Democrats, because he's a nice person who doesn't show up at white nationalist rallies, to improve the law. So he, being in the minority party, as far right as Marjorie, if not more so, was able to convince the Democrats to get something done. Marjorie can't do that, because not only is she an idiot, she's also not a very nice person, frankly. And she shows up at white nationalist rallies. And where's Kevin McCarthy? He's willing to condemn Liz Cheney for backing up the Democrats. Why can't he condemn Marjorie Taylor Greene for speaking at a white nationalist rally? The Republicans are on the cusp of attracting Hispanic and black Democrat voters. And they're showing up at white nationalist rallies to speak? That's absurd. That's absurd. And please, if you're going to tell me she's a smart person, she should know better. She should at least Google who Nick Fuentes is before showing up at his event. And if she's not a smart person, then she doesn't need to be in Congress. So either she's a smart person and knew what she was doing, or she's an idiot. Make up your mind. Maybe she just needs to fire someone from her staff for arranging for her to go speak at a white nationalist rally. If you don't clean up your own house, the voters will clean it up. In 2006, I was very vocal. 2006, I was telling Republicans everywhere, you got to get rid of the corruption. You got to get rid of the greed. You got to get rid of the bad actors within the Republican Party, or the voters are going to hold you accountable. And no one listened. And the voters purged the GOP from power. And frankly, they deserved it because they refused to clean up their own house.
You talked several times during this interview about the world seeing the difference between good and evil. I want to bring that closer to home and talk about something that Congresswoman Liz Cheney tweeted yesterday about sitting Republican House members appearing at a white nationalist gathering. She said, quote, as Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar speak at this white supremacist, anti-Semitic, pro-Putin event, silence by Republican Party leaders is deafening and enabling. All Americans should renounce this garbage and reject the Putin wing of the GOP now. Do you agree?
Absolutely. Liz Cheney was right with that statement, and she's been right for a long time. And I also saw that Ronna McDaniel came out with a statement as well, talking about how repugnant these white nationalists are. Look, there's no place in either political party for this white nationalism or racism. It's simply wrong. It's as you've indicated, speaking of evil, it's evil as well. And you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar, I don't know them, but I'm reminded of that old line from the Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid movie where one character says, morons, I've got morons on my team. And I have to think anybody that would sit down with white nationalists and speak at their conference was certainly missing a few IQ points.
Now, if you listen to this and you say, oh, well, Liz Cheney and Mitt Romney are criticizing them, so they must be right, then you too are an idiot and probably don't need to be a part of the party. You don't go speak to white nationalists who praise Vladimir Putin and Adolf Hitler. And if you don't understand why you don't do that, you got the problem, not me.
I really do like